British newspapers right now are amazed. Is new Prime Minister Boris Johnson about to pull off a miracle, pull off the absolutely impossible? Is he about to not just take Britain out of the European Union, as promised, as voters voted for, but pull them out with a deal with the European Union that so far refused to give an inch to anyone? A deal to minimise any chaos. Joining me from London is one of the very sharpest commentators in Britain, Brendan O'Neill of Spike magazine. Brendan, it's wonderful to catch up with you yet again. Could Boris Johnson pull this off?
Maybe. I mean, it's looking like he might actually do it. He's in negotiations pretty hard with the EU, and they're both making concessions. I think Boris might be making more concessions than the EU, which is worrying for people like me who voted for Brexit. But they are getting there. He's getting there. It looks like something is happening. And it looks like his new deal will be fairly different from Theresa May's deal. One of the concerns was it would just be a microwaved version of what Theresa May had already given us. But it looks like he might actually pull it off and come up with something that is actually pretty decent.
What does it look like being?
Well, it looks like, you know, the key problem with the European Union negotiations has been the obstinance of the EU. I mean, they really are an unbelievable institution. They wanted to make no concessions whatsoever. And their key argument, the thing that they were really pushing for, was to keep Northern Ireland in the customs union, properly in the customs union, and possibly even under single market arrangements as well. And what that would mean is that the EU would effectively annex a part of the United Kingdom's territory. And, you know, it's unheard of pretty much for negotiations to involve the handing over of a piece of your own territory to the person that you're negotiating with. So the EU was making a land grab. It wanted to keep a part of the UK under its rule, which would have been completely and utterly anti-democratic and against what the people voted for. Boris seems to have moved them a little bit towards saying, well, that Northern Ireland will have different rules to the UK in some areas, but it won't be fully in the customs union. So that is an element of progress in that.
And it depends a little bit on the Northern Ireland representatives, the UP actually going along with this, I guess. I don't know. Yep. What chance of it now being accepted in Parliament and then, of course, clearing the way for an election?
Well, that's the big question, and Parliament is the unpredictable factor in all of this. And the problem with our Parliament, I mean, it's become so stark. You know, I always argue that the first stage of the Brexit revolution is already complete, because what it has done, it has exposed how completely out of touch and how hateful of ordinary people many parliamentarians are. We have a parliament that stands in stark contrast to public sentiment. The public wants Brexit. The public is opposed to the EU. We know that from the 2016 referendum. Parliamentarians, more than 70% of them voted Remain. 95% of Labour MPs voted Remain. I mean, that's an extraordinary level of being out of touch with public sentiment. So Parliament has spent the past 3 years pretty much trying to thwart Brexit or dilute it or to stop it entirely. The Liberal Democrats, the misnamed Liberal Democrats, want to revoke Brexit entirely, a completely tyrannical act. So what Parliament does is unpredictable. They may, I think, they will try to scupper Boris's deal or stall it so much that there has to be an extension to our membership of the EU. And I don't think they know how much they are irritating ordinary people and how much voters are waiting to punish them at the ballot box.
Well, I think they probably do know that last bit, Brendan, because I think that's exactly why Labor and the others will try to stall this, because the minute it's through, Boris Johnson will want to call an election and there'll be no excuse then, and they'll be smashed, won't they, the Labor Party?
I think they're going to get a real pummeling at the ballot box. You know, one of the most shocking things of the past few weeks in this country is that MPs have been blocking a general election. Boris Johnson has asked a few times, he said to Parliament, let's have a general election. The Attorney General here, Geoffrey Cox, made a fantastic speech in Parliament in which he said, this is a dead Parliament. This is an illegitimate Parliament. We have no right to sit on these green benches because we're not going back to the people. So Parliament feels completely out of touch. It feels increasingly illegitimate. And I think a lot of parliamentarians, you're right, they sense that the people are going to turn against them at the ballot box. And in my view, that can't come soon enough.
Brendan, I've got to reproach you a little bit, mate, because you're doing a great job there, but you have not managed to stifle the Extinction Rebellion at birth. It's come to Australia, caused all sorts of havoc last week. But I sense that while you might have exported the virus to us, you might actually be on the brink of also exporting the cure to it, a rebellion against Extinction Rebellion. Tell us what happened today.
Oh, there are amazing scenes in London this morning. The people are rising up against Extinction Rebellion. It's incredibly exciting. You know, to those of us who think that Extinction Rebellion is an elitist movement, a movement that hates the public, which basically a movement against the people and a movement against economic growth, against progress, against what most ordinary people want, which is a nicer, more comfortable, wealthier life. And today they've been blocking the London Underground, which is absolutely ridiculous. The London Underground runs on electricity. It's public transport. It's pretty good. You know, millions of people use it. And the people have had enough. So they're rising up. I've seen videos of people throwing Extinction Rebellion protesters off the tube. I've seen them haranguing Extinction Rebellion protesters and saying to them, are you people this stupid that you would try and block the use of electric public transport? So the people are sick and tired of these bourgeois, upper middle class idiots who are continually blocking our way as we try to get to work, as we try to visit family members, as people try to get to hospital. We're sick of these people standing on our way. We don't like their message. We don't like their punishing, austere, fundamentalist view of the world. And people have had enough and they're fighting back. I think it's really, really positive.
Yes, I'm not a big fan of violence, I have to say, but I certainly understand the frustration of having your train stopped by two idiots on top of it, and I'm not sure these guys are going to be doing this again in a hurry. Brendan, to more idiocy, you might have heard before you came on that example I gave of crazy identity politics in Australia. Rugby league player identifies as Aboriginal, costing his club its sponsorship because he allegedly caused great offence by forgetting the words of a totally made-up Aboriginal ceremony. By the way, does England have ceremonies where Anglo-Saxons and Celts sort of, you know, welcome other races to their bits of Britain?
No, we don't. And, you know, as you know, Andrew, I absolutely love Australia. I love visiting Australia. But the thing I've never understood are these ceremonies that you guys have at the start of every single public event. It's very strange. It's like this kind of almost religious style process of largely it's used, in my experience when I've seen it, to express a sense of white guilt and post-colonial guilt, and you always have these kind of, you know, well-to-do woke people standing up and making these profound statements about who owns the land. But the fact that we are now punishing people from minority communities who have simply forgotten the words of a statement, I think that's really shocking, and it really demonstrates the extent to which woke culture, just how unforgiving it has become and how much it desires to punish people who don't think the exact right way or speak in the exact right way. I think it's actually quite cruel what's been done.